Next up at UFC Vegas 44, we have a last-minute scramble. Bryan Barberena was supposed to fight Matt the Immortal Brown. Matt's out. I think it was COVID. Matt's out. Jacob said he saw something on Twitter that Bryan Barberena was just heading to Las Vegas no matter what, waiting for an opponent. Looks like he got his opponent. So we have Bryan Barberena versus Darian Weeks. Bryan Barberena, 15-8 overall, only 2-3 in his last 5. Darian Weeks, 5-0 overall, 5-0 in his last 5. It's an interesting matchup because Darian Weeks only has 5 fights in his entire professional career. Bryan Barberena, he's a fun brawler. He likes to come forward. He's got a pretty good gas tank. He's busy. He's not very technical, though, but he is technical enough and has enough gas and enough pressure that really puts on a show and can make up for any holes that he has in his game. He has decent wrestling and grappling, but he almost never uses it. A few years ago, he had a great chin, but he's really starting to fade. And he's been in a few too many wars. He's starting to show it. He's starting to wear. This is a guy that absolutely loved to brawl and could brawl. And now I just feel like he's just starting to come apart just a little bit. He has a negative striking differential of 5-4. So that means, 4-5, which means he hits you 4 times and you hit him back 5 times. And he relies on that. His entire game plan is basically to get hit, come forward, and then hit you. And it's just a dirty, dirty brawl. It's fun to watch. He has a ton of fight of the night bonuses, and that's because he's willing to mix it up. My concern with him in this fight, though, is if he does get taken down, which he does get pretty often, he can stand back up, but I don't know if he'll be able to stand up here. Darian Weeks, he's making his UFC debut. He only has 5 professional fights, but if you watch tape on him, he looks ready for the most part. He does have a ton of amateur experience in MMA. He also has a wrestling background, which helped him develop his composure. Darian is a wrestler. He's very comfortable striking. And for only 5 fights, his composure is incredible. He's got very real power in his hands. He has explosive takedowns and legit submissions. He's an actual threat everywhere. One of the most impressive things I saw, so there's a ton of tape on him. First of all, he only has 5 fights. All 5 fights are on the internet. It's very easy to watch him fight and break him down. I watched all of that tape, but one of the most impressive things I saw in all of those fights is in his fight against Craig Fairley. It was so easy for him to defend a takedown. So Darian threw a kick. Craig caught it. He lifted it clean in the air. He turned. He pressured. He cut the corner. He tried to run the pipe. He changed directions. And at no point was Darian worried, off balance. He wasn't concerned. It was, honestly, that composure was really, really impressive. You would have thought he'd been there 100 times and it just didn't matter to him. When you first see their records and you first see this matchup on paper, my instincts and probably yours were immediately to jump on Bryan Barberena for the experience. 15-8 versus 5-0 UFC debut. I mentioned Weeks has a wrestling background, but he has power in his hands and he does prefer to strike. My concern is that while he has power and he has been successful, we've seen him really wobble people and put a beating on some people, it's all looping shots. Everything's coming from here. Nothing is straight up the middle. It's all looping, whether it's overhands, whether it's hooks. Even his jab is like a looping jab. He's turning it around and over. And when you're fighting a guy like Bryan Barberena, you need to be there first. You need to be there first. And any little motion you add, any little loop, anything that's not straight up the middle takes an extra half a second to get there. And that's going to be a problem in this fight. You need to touch Bryan Barberena before he touches you, because otherwise he will make it ugly. He will get in your face. He will make it a brawl. And that's just not the fight you want to be in with Bryan Barberena, because that's his bread and butter. Darian Weeks has wrestling. He can certainly take Bryan down, but I mentioned before, Bryan pops back up, and I don't know if he'll be able to pop up in this fight, but he does have an incredible amount of experience. Man, this is honestly a really tough fight, and the odds show that. These odds are closer than I thought they would be. I actually thought the odds makers would be all over Bryan Barberena for this, but he is only 2-3 in his last 5. He is starting to fade a little bit in his career. I know a lot of people are excited for Weeks to make his UFC debut. I do think it's just a touch too soon. I am going with Bryan Barberena here. It's not an easy pick, though, because Darian's got all the tools, but honestly, the pick comes down to Darian's looping shots. Watch those fights. Even when he's landing and has solid power and it looks good, they're all looping and they're not intended to loop, meaning he's not throwing big overhand rights on purpose. He's just throwing what he thinks are 1-2s and they're just coming from here instead of here. So that is the one piece that has me going Bryan Barberena is if Darian Weeks is a half a second behind, Bryan Barberena will be in his face, touching him up, making it ugly, making it dirty, pouring it on. Weeks took this on short notice, but I imagine he'll be in shape and ready to go. And we've mentioned this before. Bryan Barberena also has a brand new opponent. So listen, I'm going Barberena here. I don't think I'm going to spend the $8,400 in DraftKings because I would not be surprised if Darian Weeks put it on him because he does have raw power. He does have wrestling. I don't think he'll win a decision. I think he sort of can really put a hurting on Bryan Barberena or lose a decision because I think the longer it goes, the uglier Barberena will make it, and that's what he wants, an ugly fight. We don't have a Monkey Knife Fight strike line yet, but I will say go check out some of the bets and the prop bets available. You know, maybe a inside the distance decision, no action for Darian Weeks might be a solid bet. There may be something here because there are so many people that just think Darian Weeks is going to beat the crap out of Bryan Barberena. He's here. He deserves to be. He does have amateur experience, but let's be real. He's 5-0, and pretty much every single one of those fighters except one had a losing record. But if you dig deeper, you watch the tape, he's got power. He's talented. He definitely has gas. I just think the looping shots, the experience might be a little too much. It's a little too soon for him to be in the UFC, but welcome to the UFC. We'll see what happens. I'm looking forward to it. wewantpicks.com/bets. We have 5 different betting partners. 5. Jump into any one of them or all of them. Make a deposit. Let me know, and I will send you $50 as a thank you. Cash App, Venmo, however you want it. I'll send you $50. wewantpicks.com/bets. Let me know your picks on this fight. I'm really curious how you guys read it and what you think. We'll see you for the fights on Saturday.